Hey, everybody. Welcome. It's Resistance Live for the 3rd of October, 2019. Whoo, boy. It's been a really crazy and wild 24 hours. And as usual, we have a lot to talk about. This particular 24 hours has been, I mean, I just don't even know that I have the right adjectives quite to categorize it. I saw in a number of the comments that some of you are having trouble catching the first minute or so of the broadcast. I want to remind you all that you can always go back and watch the first couple of minutes after the broadcast is over. And I do always do my best to make sure that we don't get into any serious issues of concern until after I see the numbers are actually ticking up on the broadcast. So if you're here, great. And please remember as well that if you are missing the first couple of minutes of the broadcast, you can always go back and watch it on the replay on Patreon. We have a bunch of immediate breaking news, which I want to touch upon really quickly. A couple of things that I just want to note in terms of things that are happening today. From the standpoint of expectations. Reminder, if you are missing the first few minutes of this broadcast, you can always go back and watch it on Patreon. Okay. The first thing that everybody should be aware of today is that Kurt Volker is testifying today on the Hill. He is the former special envoy from the U.S. to Ukraine. He is someone who was on the call with Zelensky and Trump. He then traveled to Ukraine the day after to sit down with Zelensky and tell him how to comply with President Trump's behavior. He resigned last Friday when he had been called to testify. He has previously taken a position against Russia in favor of Ukraine. So we don't know details of what's going to come out of this testimony, but that testimony is taking place today, and I expect that what we learn about it will be galling, okay? Not to mention that we have additional things that have happened in the last 24 hours that are really bad. I am going to save the conversation about the president's statements on the lawn of the White House until the end of the broadcast for very good reason, because I want to get through a couple of other things that relate to it right now, okay? So Volker is testifying on the Hill today. We will see what comes out of that. We learned yesterday that Vice President Pence was used, in the words that were used by the media, by the president as a part of this scheme to extort campaign interference from Ukraine. Pence's defense right now seems to be that he was too stupid to know what had been offered on the call. That is not going to fly. I'm just going to say it out loud. In part because one of Pence's senior advisors was actually on the call, and Pence could have had a readout on that call within a few hours of it taking place. So the interesting thing to watch about this from a strategic standpoint is that Pence at the moment is trying to alienate himself from the president. That, by the way, may, again, this is speculation on my part, may be an indication of some of the conversations about impeachment that are happening behind the scenes with regard to this president. Because obviously, you know, if Pence is directly involved in this, which I think we can all agree he has to be, we already know from the president's statements that he was, that means that Pence is likely to be impeached as well. The reason, by the way, I want to make this really clear, why Trump is being so overt about Pence's participation in this is because he is signaling to the Republicans that if they allow an impeachment proceeding to go ahead, they may end up with President Pelosi. And so he's trying in a really smarmy way to signal that Pence will go down with the ship and he will take Pence down with him, and that the Republicans better be careful what they do. Nonetheless, highly unlikely that Vice President Pence is going to get out of this scot-free. Because indeed, the other thing that we know is that he flew to Ukraine also and sat down with Zelensky and talked to him about this issue of the aid being withheld. His only claim right now is that he didn't realize that there had been a leveraging of digging up dirt, false or true, on the Bidens as a part of this. And that is exactly what doesn't fly. Because his senior staffer was on the call with Ukraine and heard exactly what the president said. So that bit of breaking news happened yesterday as well. Also yesterday, we learned from the New York Times that the whistleblower had gone to the House Intelligence Committee prior to filing the whistleblower complaint to let them know that the whistleblower had something significant that would be of interest. I want to make something really clear because of how the reporting was on this. This kind of thing happens all the time. There's nothing improper about Adam Schiff having taken a phone call from a whistleblower. There's nothing improper with Adam Schiff or his staff saying to this whistleblower, you need to follow the appropriate procedures to file a complaint. Nothing untoward, nothing unethical, nothing wrong with it. And the key to all of you who are reading the reporting about this on the right-wing talking points is that you have to remember that what's at stake here is not the conduct of Adam Schiff. What is at stake here is whether or not the president committed a crime and an impeachable offense in withholding aid to Ukraine in exchange for asking them to dig up dirt on his political rivals and to interfere in the US election. I will remind you all, foreign intervention in US elections is a felony. The president solicited a felony. He also engaged in what is arguably campaign finance fraud. And that's leaving aside the abuses of power and everything else that could be alleged in an impeachment proceeding. Do not focus on the conduct of Adam Schiff here when you are talking about this to your friends and neighbors and on social media. It's irrelevant. There's literally nothing that Adam Schiff did here that is out of the ordinary or extraordinary or that gives the Republicans any leg to stand on with regard to the president's crimes. So we have to be very careful about the way in which we talk about it for that reason, okay? That again, I know that I said the Republicans were going to leap all over it. Ronna McDaniel leaped all over it literally like 2 minutes after I said that. The point here is that it's the president's conduct that is at issue, not Adam Schiff's. And what the whistleblower has reported is obviously true. The president has confessed to it as recently as this morning. We'll get to that in a minute. And the key issue here is that no matter what this whistleblower did, it's the president's conduct that makes him impeachable. If the president engaged in the conduct, and again, he's confessed multiple times now, if the president engaged in this conduct, it's an impeachable offense. That's the only thing that matters. So I want everybody to be really careful about not getting wrapped up in this Republican talking point of, oh, it's a big conspiracy with Adam Schiff, and it's not. Adam Schiff his staff took a phone call. The staff said, go file a whistleblower complaint and hire yourself a lawyer. That's it. That's it. All right. We had two absolutely off the rail press conferences from the president yesterday. I trust that at this point, everybody has seen the madness and the insanity that played out over and over again yesterday live on national television. I will say this to all of you. It was extremely hard to watch. For those of you who didn't watch it live, it was decompensation, mental instability, conspiracy theories, paranoia in real time, directly in front of the press and in front of the president of Finland. It is yet another indication of all the reasons why this president is unfit to serve. And I would encourage all of you, by the way, to go read the article that was published this morning in The Atlantic by George Conway called Unfit to Serve. It is written like a legal brief. It discusses all the ways in which the president is mentally unfit to serve. It's an incredibly long piece and incredibly well written. And I'm just going to say one other thing here about this. I have been a critic of George Conway at certain moments. We still don't know the story of what's going on behind the scenes there in his marriage. I will tell you, however, that this particular piece, which I read front to back this morning, is probably the most thorough indictment of the president's mental state and all the reasons why impeachment is the route to pursue to remove him that I have ever seen anywhere. So I really encourage you all to go read it. And again, reminder, George Conway is a senior partner at one of the most prominent law firms in the nation. This is written the way that I would write it if I was writing a legal brief as to why the president should be impeached based on mental incapacity. So go read it. And by the way, it's a very interesting read after what happened yesterday in those press conferences. Okay. The other bit of breaking news we had yesterday was with regard to this emergency hearing from the State Department Inspector General, who went up to the Hill and disclosed that there were documents he had been provided on various conspiracy theories. We learned late last night that yes, indeed, those documents came from Rudy Giuliani on forged documents saying they were from the White House and that they were sent over to Pompeo and then were circulated by Pompeo's staff up to the Inspector General. So let me just say this. I said it last night on Twitter. I'm going to say it here again because it's really important to say this. Representative Raskin got it wrong. It was very clear by the end of the day yesterday that he knew he had gotten it wrong. He initially came out and said this was one big distraction. That is not what this was. And indeed, when you see the statements from Adam Schiff and Elijah Cummings and others about this particular briefing yesterday, it's very far from a distraction. an effort by the president and Rudy Giuliani to plant conspiracy theories with the inspector general and state in order to discredit witnesses to the president's crimes. So these apparently relate to, again, folks who have been on duty at the State Department doing work related to Ukraine, who are likely to come before the Congress to testify about the president's illegality. The conspiracy theories were sent over by Rudy Giuliani, now by his own admission, to try to discredit those witnesses before they are called to testify. And that includes, by the way, folks who have been on the diplomatic staff, who are direct witnesses, and in fact, who Hillary Clinton was talking about last night on Rachel Maddow. You can all go watch that broadcast if you would care to. So this is the point. The reason why this was so urgent is that the inspector general plainly thought that, and again, reminder, there were other witnesses that were supposed to testify today in addition to Volker, who have now been bumped to next week. But what is clear is that the inspector general's office was concerned enough about the conspiracy theories that were being circulated by Rudy Giuliani on behalf of the president that the inspector general felt an urgent need to brief the committees that were going to take the testimony from those witnesses about the false allegations that were being planted against them. Reminder, witness tampering is a federal crime. And I don't think there's much debate at this point that the falsification of documents that plant conspiracy theories against witnesses with the intent of undermining their credibility in front of the intelligence committees is an effort to intimidate or otherwise interfere with a witness's testimony. So it's not a small thing that happened yesterday. I want to make that very clear. Raskin's initial statement might have led some people to think that it is. It's not. It's not. And in my opinion, it's actually a sign of how far this administration is willing to go to discredit and interfere with witnesses to what the president has done here that is impeachable and criminal. So, I know it was very confusing at the time that the story around this was breaking. It got even more confusing because Rudy Giuliani gave another set of unhinged interviews last night about all of this. Fundamentally, the key takeaway from this is that Giuliani planted conspiracy theories designed to besmirch the reliability of key witnesses to the president's crimes who were about to testify on the Hill. Okay? That's what it was. And, I will just say this. The inspectors general who have been operating now inside the DOJ, inside the State Department, inside DHS, are at this moment in time one of the few upstanding backstops to the devolution of the executive branch. So the State Department Inspector General did something exactly right here. I just want to say that. He took this information to the Hill in advance of anticipated testimony to warn the people who were going to be taking that testimony that there might be a smear campaign underway designed to besmirch the reliability of these witnesses in the public domain or with the committees, and that they should be aware that the falsification of documents purportedly from the White House was a chunk of that. So, again, that's the truth of what we learned yesterday. And again, there are statements that came out from Adam Schiff and others about the seriousness of this yesterday. It was not a wild goose chase. It was not a distraction. It was actually an attempt by the State Department IG to protect the witnesses that are direct witnesses to the president's crimes who are about to testify. Okay. So I hope that clears that up. All right. Whew. Now we get to the meat of what happened this morning. So the president is on his way to Florida today. On the White House lawn, he came out this morning, and not only did he confess to asking Ukraine to interfere in the U.S. election by investigating the Bidens, but he also called upon China to do the same thing. And the interesting thing about the allegations with regard to China is that he first said we have this horrible trade war that's really hurting the Chinese. And then the next thing he said, literally seconds later, was, if I was China, I'd be opening an investigation into the Bidens as well. This morning on Twitter, I have recirculated a tweet that came shortly. I was outraged immediately, and I will explain why in just a second. But there's a tweet from Joyce Vance that I have recirculated since, which explains why what the president did this morning is a felony. It actually cites the federal code section that the president violated, and he clearly violated it with intent. He knows he's breaking the law, and he's doing it right out in the open. The strategy from the president appears to be at this moment, I'm just going to keep committing crimes like it's not a crime. And I'm going to do it right out in the open without any shame. And I'm going to act like it's totally normal. That, by the way, I want everyone is a very key gaslighting technique. It is incredibly destabilizing to those of us who potentially would be ashamed or embarrassed or worried about prosecution if we had committed the same kinds of crimes. The president's mental disorders do not allow him to feel that. And it is destabilizing to watch someone commit a crime in real time on the White House lawn like it's no big deal. Okay? It's plainly part of his strategy. But the real key takeaway that I want you all to see from this is basically what the president did this morning is self-incriminate on the White House lawn. We already had the summary of the call readout that showed that he had violated the law by trying to withhold aid from Ukraine in exchange for interference in the 2020 election. He confessed to exactly the same thing on the White House lawn this morning. Like, he literally confessed. And then he went ahead and did the same, like perpetrated the exact same crime with regard to China standing on the White House lawn. And everybody needs to call it as such. Like, he literally committed a crime on the White House lawn this morning. It's an abuse of power. It's a violation of federal law. Like, literally all that it would take to impeach him on that today is calling a hearing, playing the tape, and holding a vote. Articles of impeachment would have to be filed, but that's all it would take. It could literally be handled, as Walt Schaub put it this morning, in a 45-second hearing in front of House Judiciary. So the thing I want to make really clear here is that we can't allow his disorder to take away from his criminality. Okay? Like, he is trying right now to normalize crimes against the nation by acting like it's no big deal, by doing it right out in the open. We cannot allow that to happen, right? Our strategy has to be to call it out for what it is. It's a crime. What happened on the lawn of the White House this morning is a crime. It's a crime and a confession. It is the equivalent, as many people have pointed out this morning, of that famous scene in A Few Good Men where George Nicholson screams out, "You're goddamn right, I ordered the code red." That's basically what happened on the lawn of the White House this morning. And, you know, the thing that I am the most concerned about right now is that if the Democrats lose control of the narrative, if they allow the gaslighting to continue to be effective, to not call this what it is, if the media does not call it what it is, it's going to be harder and harder to hold the president's feet to the fire. He should be, I mean, like, seriously, like, articles of impeachment should be filed today. And, you know, one of the things that was both good and bad about the press conference that was held by Pelosi and Schiff yesterday morning is that they appeared rational, they appeared measured, they appeared stable. You know, Pelosi did hold the President Trump to account at the end of that press conference quite effectively. But the danger of it is that if the outrage at what the president has done does not continue to propel this momentum toward impeachment forward, we will lose the support that we already have. So the key thing right now, from a strategic standpoint, from a messaging standpoint, from all of our perspectives, is to express our outrage about what happened this morning, to call it what it is. You know, I went onto Twitter this morning. I'm followed by like dozens of reporters on Twitter, you know, names you would all recognize. And I urged them to not allow the president's narrative to control. The New York Times did it like half an hour later. You know, they were like, the president calls for China to kind of like interfere in the US election. He illegally called for the Chinese to investigate his political opponent to interfere in the 2020 election. That's what we should call it. That's what we should call it. It's illegal. It's a crime. It's an impeachable offense. And, you know, if we do not continue to propel forward on this front, it's going to be harder and harder, again, to push the Republicans to stand on the right side of justice. Okay. Last thing I want to mention on this front today, by the way, because we had some questions about this. The Republican Party, the GOP, is desperate right now to change the narrative on all of this. Okay. They're just absolutely desperate to change the narrative. They are going to target Schiff. They're going to target this whistleblower. They're going to find any other excuse than to directly look at the president's criminality. You know, I will just say this, you know, from the standpoint of where the GOP stands, our efforts have to be directed at this moment in time toward pushing forward everyone on the need to impeach this president. And we have a multitude of grounds to do it right now. Just an absolute multitude of grounds. It's not just that, there have been dead kids in detention camps. It's not just that he wanted to shoot migrants, which would have ended up in some of them being dead. It's not just that we're running a system of concentration camps in this country. It's not just that he paid off a porn star, right? It's not just that he called upon Russia to interfere in our elections. It's everything that has piled up to this point. And our urgency about this, I will just say this, because I said this also this morning on Twitter. This is not just your average genuine emergency. This is not just your average constitutional crisis. We're at freaking DEFCON 5 right now. Like, he's literally standing on the lawn of the White House asking people to interfere in the 2020 election, knowing that what he is doing is a felony. And he's not going to stop unless he is actually stopped by this Congress. So, we have to continue to leverage pressure on the GOP and to not give weight in anything that we're posting on social media or anything that we're talking about to these talking points about the Bidens or these talking points about Adam Schiff. We have to stay focused, laser focused on the president's own conduct, because as long as the focus is on that, there can be no denying that he has broken the law, he has abused his power, he has committed impeachable offenses, and he needs to be removed. It's really that simple. All right, Melissa, I want to answer your quick question here about Joyce's tweet, because she did point out that there's this issue of uncompensated campaign finance violations. So let me just say this. While Joyce is absolutely correct that no judicial decision has treated the voluntary provision of uncompensated opposition as a thing of value, that doesn't mean it's not, right? And let me just say this. The way that this shakes out in the law is the president withheld $400 million of aid to Ukraine in the hope that the Ukrainian government would provide him with dirt on a political rival that would throw the 2020 election. There is a substantial argument to be made here that the uncompensated contribution to the president's campaign that would result in that campaign finance violation is $400 million. And Joyce made that point, and that is a legit argument. And personally, I think it would fly in a court of law. So I'm not particularly worried, by the way, let me just say this, about the logistics of this. I'm more concerned about the strategic implications of what this means for impeachment, because the president is not being tried right now in a criminal court of law. The point here is that he has to be removed from power. That's the most important thing. He has to be removed from power because, I'll just remind you all, it's not like the fascist nature of this ongoing autocracy is slowing down while we're in the middle of impeachment proceedings. They're doing a DNA database right now of migrants who are coming across the border. That is a profound violation of universal human rights. And they're doing it, by the way, so that they can track people. Again, reminder, just in case you need a historical parallel, the Nazis kept profound records of the people that they held in concentration camps. That's the whole reason why Holocaust survivors have tattoos with numbers on their arms. That's the territory that this administration is in while we are seeking to remove this president. Okay. So the absolute key here, again, I'm just going to say one other thing, because there was a question about this morning. I don't want to discount, that Pence is a believer in conversion therapy, that his anti-LGBTQ policies are obscene. Okay. I also want to remind you all of this. We have a president right now who is literally insane, unreliable, can't control himself, screaming at reporters in a diplomatic event twice yesterday, interrupting people, shouting at down reporters, unable to legitimately answer a question, repeating himself ad nauseum. Meanwhile, he's emboldened the fascists and the white nationalists in his administration to perpetrate crimes against humanity. He also has access to the nuclear codes. And while all of this is going on, he's legitimately, overtly, out in public, undermining American democracy from the lawn of the people's house. We can fight a President Pence if that's where we end up, if he's not impeached. Go back, watch earlier in the broadcast, because there's all sorts of reasons why he will be, should be, is implicated in all of this stuff going on with Ukraine. We can fight the policies of a Pence administration in court, and we'll win. Because those kind of allegations, those sorts of policies are exactly how the ACLU has been winning against this administration. Fighting a President Pence is a hell of a lot easier than fighting an entire executive branch that is emboldening and supporting and enabling a profoundly disordered president who has no capacity to control his criminality. It's a very different ball of wax. And please don't take that as an endorsement of President Pence, because it's not. I'm just saying that, like, if we're going to hold one up against the other, I know which one I would pick right now for the short term that it will take until he's like Pence was pushed out of office in the 2020 election. Because, by the way, he'll be the easiest Republican candidate to beat that we have ever seen. So onward we should go. And let me just say this. For everybody who's worried about a President Pence, I will remind you that the dead bodies in detention camps in this country are piling up. We still do not know how many people are dead. We have people who are dying of cancer right now who are being denied treatment, who are being held in human detention camps. There's plenty of reason, moral, legal, congressional, constitutional, for Trump to be pushed out of office as fast as humanly possible. All right, that's it. I'm just gonna say one other thing. I'm really on this today about calling this like it is. I know I've said it already on this broadcast, but I just want to make it really clear. Call what happened on the lawn of the White House what it is. It is a crime. It is a confession. In every way that you talk about it today on social media, in anything that you share, call it what it is. Because I'm frustrated at the unwillingness of the media to do that so far today. All right. Much love to all of you. I'll be here regular time tomorrow. Oh, new Patreon benefits are up. So go check them out. We have like tote bags and key rings. And at the $100 level, calls with me every month. I think it's every month. Oh, no, it's once a quarter. Okay, bye.